Okay.
Welcome everyone. So we learned yesterday about Scrum, or we revised about Scrum. We'll have a brush up about that topic. So before going to Nexus, it's good that you can just brush up on your topic about Scrum. So in Scrum, we have Scrum events, Scrum role, and Scrum artifacts. So there are 5 events in Scrum: Sprint, Daily Scrum, Sprint Planning, Sprint Review, Sprint Retrospective. And Sprint is a maximum up to 1 month. And Daily Scrum is a 15-minute event. And Sprint Planning is an 8-hour event for a 1-month sprint. And Sprint Review is a 4-hour, and Sprint Retrospective is a 3-hour event. And there are 3 roles in Scrum. They are Product Owner, Scrum Master, and Development Team. And Product Owner, there is only 1 Product Owner, and Development Team sizes 3 to 9. And there are 3 artifacts in Scrum: Product Backlog, Sprint Backlog, and Increment. So Product Backlog is a list of all the features that a team is planning to deliver to the customer, and it evolves over the time. And the Sprint Backlog is generally a subset of Product Backlog, where a team identifies a set of features that are planned to deliver in a particular sprint. And Increment is actually a summation of what is done in the sprint with what they have already done in previous sprint. So that's all about Scrum. So this is actually the Scrum framework. You have a product owner and the team's plans and from a sprint backlog. Now, if you look at the Scrum framework, the maximum number of people here is 9 developers plus 1 Scrum Master plus 1 product owner. So that makes to the 11 team member. Now, so we have some challenges. So the question here is it really possible for this 11 people to deliver a complex project which requires more than 9 team members? So what is normally seen in organization is that they will add members to this development team. So as Scrum suggests, the maximum people that can be on a development team is 9. But what organization usually practices, they practice Scrum, but instead of 9, it goes on increasing like 18, 20, 24, and they will add 2-3 Scrum Masters, and everything become complicated. So in order to avoid that, we are using now Nexus Framework, which is again from Ken Schauber. They have defined all the roles, event, artifacts, and how this scaling Scrum should work. So these are some of the challenges that is currently a Scrum team is facing. So the first one is, what happens if there is more than 3 Scrum teams in a project? So you assume that your project is a 2-year project with a higher complexity and requires more than 50 people to work. So what happens in that scenario? And what happens if your team members are distributed? So your team project size is now 50, and some are in UK, some are in US, and some are in India. So how you handle that situation? And all the Scrum team, which is actually distributed, are working on a single product backlog, and there is only 1 product owner. So you might understand the complexity and the number of communication channels that the product owner should handle. So he is a person who should be actually now forced to handle 24/7 from all the time zones. You have to look at the queries because your team is distributed, and there is only 1 product owner and 1 product backlog. And also your team is using the same code base to push to production. So which means that you have all the 50 people, excluding Scrum Masters. So all these 50 developers will deploy their code into the same code base at the same time. So there are a lot of integration issues. So the common challenges they face is how do they integrate their work and how they test this integrated increment. So you have all the concepts like DevOps, but this is not covered in Nexus. In Nexus, we only cover the framework. The practices are not covered. And also, there are situations like you have only 1 product backlog, and there are chances that the scope overlaps in the product backlog. So how do team effectively pick up the requirements from the product backlog to their particular sprint backlog so that it doesn't overlap, so that not the same person is doing twice the work? Okay, if you have any doubts on this, so as far it is clear, so these are the common challenges and issues faced by a Scrum team. Okay. Are you good? Now, there comes a picture of the Nexus. So in Nexus, it's suggested that you are using this framework when there is more than 3 Scrum teams. So in this diagram, you can see that there are 9 Scrum teams spread across. So these are distributed teams, and even within a Scrum team, they can be distributed, which are not co-located people are there. And how I will give you a basic overview of how the framework works. So you have a single product backlog. Now we'll come to Nexus Integration Team. So Nexus Integration Team is actually a team formed by a combination of 3 set of roles. One, your product owner is a part of an integration team. A Scrum Master, necessarily from any one of the team, will be a part of the integration team, and there will be Nexus integration team members. Those are developers. So you can see as a color code, you can see that from each team, there is a member in an integration team. So Sarita is asking, is Nexus same as Safe? No. Nexus is very lightweighted. Safe is, you have 4 layers like team, portfolio, program, and portfolio layer are there in Safe. But in Nexus, it's a simple framework. It's very easy to implement. So we'll come to that. Now you see that there is a Nexus integration team which consists of the product owner, a Scrum Master, and development team from each, or not necessarily. You can see that from team 8 there is no representative from a development team. It's a Scrum Master representative. So the main function of the Nexus integration team is to make sure that all the teams are synchronously working and there are no integration issues. So when the code is pushed to production, it's a primary responsibility for the Nexus integration team. They ensure that there is no production deployment issues or there is no integration issues. So that is a core function of integration team. So there comes all your DevOps practice, everything. I'm not going to that. And it is also advisable that the members in the Nexus integration team, like excluding the product owner, if you can take the Scrum Master and all other people, their primary responsibility should be towards the Nexus integration team. They can also work as a secondary team member to the their respective team. So here you can see that the Scrum Master is from the team 8. So he plays the primary role as a Nexus integration team, but he also handles team 8 Scrum Master. He's a Scrum Master for team 8. But his primary responsibility is always towards the Nexus integration team, and they are the people who's responsible for coordinating all these 9 teams, 9 or less. So it is from 3 to 9 teams, and they ensure that integration is done properly. So from the product backlog, they create a Nexus sprint backlog. So Nexus sprint backlog is a subset of product backlog, just as our sprint backlog, and this is being done in discussion with all the team members. All the 9 team members discuss with the product owner, and they identify or they define a Nexus sprint backlog. And from Nexus sprint backlog, they define a Nexus goal. So Nexus goal is like, okay, this sprint, it can be a 2-week or a 3-week sprint. So by the end of this sprint, we will deliver dashboard of the feature. So in order to deliver the dashboard, so this team might be working on a mobile app, this team might be working on an iOS, this team might be working on a web, and this team might be working on a web on a component too, and there's some integration. And similarly, all 9 teams will be working towards the Nexus goal. Now, once this Nexus sprint backlog is defined, each team will have their own separate sprint backlog. So each team is a Scrum team. So whatever we learned yesterday about Scrum, it's applicable to the individual component here. So they will have a separate sprint backlog. They will have a separate daily Scrum will be there. No sprint review. It's always a Nexus review. And they will have a sprint retrospective will be there. So it's like an individual Scrum team they perform. They have a Scrum Master. and they have a development team maximum up to 3 to 9 team members. And from the Nexus sprint log, each team will have a sprint backlog. And from the sprint backlog, they will so basically what happens is that the sprint backlog, each individual team will be working on their sprint backlog, and each individual team will have a definition of done for their team. So there is a stringent team level definition of done for each team, and consolidated together, it is a responsibility of the Nexus integration team, which is in green. So they integrate, they are actually accountable for the integration, and they integrate all the code or all the completed work increment completed by each team. They integrate and they form a integrated increment, which is sent for the Nexus sprint review. So Nexus sprint review is actually a demo that is shown to the customer, which is actually the consolidated work done by all the 9 teams, and you have an integrated increment. So this is a nutshell about Nexus. So Tilak is asking, so the Scrum Master should have coding knowledge since they are part of the integration team. Actually, integration team is like a, we call it as like a Scrum Master in your Scrum. So they are actually responsible. They are only held accountable to ensure that Nexus practice are followed within the team. So they never actually do coding, or they don't have a sprint backlog. For Nexus integration team, they don't have a sprint backlog, and they don't have a increment push. They actually gel all the teams. So will the Nexus sprint run in parallel with all the 9 sprints? No, there is nothing called a Nexus sprint. So you have a Nexus sprint backlog. This sprint backlog will be bifurcated to the 9 teams, creating their own individual sprint backlog. Okay, she is asking like Nexus sprint. Yes, so Nexus sprint is in parallel with the 9 team sprint. So it is not like a team 1 is having a sprint of 1 week, team 2 is having a sprint of 3 weeks, and your Nexus sprint is 4 weeks. That doesn't make sense. So if your Nexus sprint is 3 weeks, all the team will have a 3 week of work, which means that their sprint log is also 3 weeks, and their team will have a definition of done, individual definition of done for each team. And there will be a definition of done for the entire Nexus also. So each team will have a definition of done. So they also look at the picture of the Nexus definition of done also. So the challenging role here is the Nexus integration team. They have to ensure, and here in Nexus integration team, the Scrum Master only ensures and looks at the overall picture and ensure that everything is happening. But the team members here, you can see like there are other 8 to 9 team members. They are actually doing the coaching and solving the integration issues, fixing all the issues, and whatever there is, if there is an integration issue between team 1 and team 6, it is not done by the Scrum Master in Nexus integration. Instead, it is done by the development members, team members or developers. They fix the issue. And product owner is part of the Nexus integration team. He ensures that product backlog is always refined and all the teams are aware of the features. So you have a lot of people to help product owner here. So they call it as a Nexus integration team. And the work carried out is a integrated work. And the output, you call it as integrated increment. In Scrum, it is called increment. Here it is integrated increment. Is it Nexus similar to Scrum of Scrums technique, which is followed in Scrum? Okay, so it says no. Maybe Scrum of Scrum, it's not formalized. Sumit, maybe you can throw some ideas on that about Scrum of Scrum. Isn't Nexus similar to Scrum of Scrum? So I don't think so.
No, there is actually in Scrum of Scrums, what happens is all the Scrum Masters from different teams, they come together and they work on, they give the output, like what, give the kind of status kind of thing, where they discuss like what what one team is facing and if there are any impediments at the their team level for whatever Scrum Master is representing. So that kind of different, but this kind of thing is different in Nexus. Actually, there are multiple technical people involved in the integration team, but in Scrum of Scrum, generally that doesn't happen. It happens as like the multiple Scrum Masters, they meet together once a week, or sometimes it's daily also, and that depends. And they discuss all this, that how exactly the complete product backlog and is going, and what is the status of their current development in their team.
Excellent.
So there is no integration part in Scrum of Scrum actually.
So basically, if you can control, like Nexus works well when you have a single product backlog and all the team aims at a single increment. So this all team works towards a single goal. So they have, it's called Nexus goal. But I think in case of a Scrum of Scrum, it's a bit different. Like your team need not be like the work done by team one need not necessarily need to be integrated with team two. But here it is not the case. Like all the work completed by each individual team need to be integrated. So that's how you form an integrated increment.
Yeah, and actually, Davis, the thing is, Scrum of Scrums is generally it cannot be defined as scaled actually. There is no scaling in that, because I'll tell you the real-time example. Like
Okay.
we were developing ERP system for SAP, and we had multiple product backlogs, and everything was integrated at the high level because it's a complete ERP system. So you have your SRM, CRM, finance, and all the different modules. So each module had a different product backlog, and on top of that, there was one business case where you integrate everything that what we see in generally in safe.
Okay,
Because in
but
safe, yeah, because in safe, after program level, when we go for the large solution,
portfolio. Mhm.
yeah, so the large solution, when it comes to that, that time we can say it's kind of scaling, but Scrum of Scrums cannot be called as scaling. So in the scaling, there is only, we can take it as safe, and there is one Kanban. For Kanban also, I think there is one framework, and then Nexus.
Oh, so what you are saying that for your team, like each team was having a separate product backlog, right?
Yeah, actually, what happens is at the, because since it's a very big solution, so at the large solution level, you have a chief product backlog kind of person, a product owner kind of person, who will be taking the requirements from the from the end users, or from the customers. He will sit with the different product owners. They will decide that what all things has to be part of, because there will be a lot of integration with between finance and CRM, SRM, and everything. So they will decide, then they will create their own product backlog for their own particular module.
Okay, so if in that case, like there is a multiple product back, so which means there's an individual product backlog for each team, then it is not a scaled agile or a
Yeah.
scaling scrum. So here, if you can look at that, there is only one product backlog. So which means that all the requirement comes from a single source. And the
Yes.
team is actually, but there are different sprint backlog. Each team will have a separate sprint backlog, which is actually a subset of Nexus sprint backlog. So I think,
Yeah.
but what Sumit says is actually, this is a very common scenario. What Sumit said, it happens in every organization. They use Scrum of Scrum, but they have now formalized this, and they have a set of defined framework now called Nexus. So we'll move on.
Davis, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Can you please go back to last slide?
Okay.
Yeah. So what I understand with all this, like,
Sure.
there is a one big product, and
Product
that
backlog.
big product is, yeah, product backlog, which is further refined by a product owner and a scrum master, and we call it Nexus sprint backlog. Rest
Uh,
of the nine
okay. Go on. Oh, go on. Go on.
rest of the 9 teams, what they do is they pick their items or issues from that Nexus sprint backlog to create their own product backlog.
Their own
Am
sprint
I right?
backlog.
Yeah, right. For their own sprint backlog. Am I right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay. And now my question is, what the Sumit said, it's like there is a one product owner will be taking that is like the chief product owner will be taking getting all the things from rest of the customers or other product owners, and then they create their own backlog, what that particular thing is called for?
No, Sumit?
We when we talk about agile, we have
Uh-huh.
a product vision, right?
Yeah.
So from product vision, it can be, see, there is no as such, I am not very sure whether it is called some there is any name for that particular requirement document or something. From that we
Mhm.
define it. It can, you can take it as a what you say, the requirement document, this which will cover all the modules, or for each of the product backlogs, and all the integration parts, what all things has to be done, and how the all the modules will be integrated. So from that we create multiple product backlogs, and each product backlog will have their own product owner.
Okay.
Okay, so in
Okay,
that
and
case, there are multiple product backlog, multiple product owners. But in Nexus, we have one product backlog, one product owner. So it's actually streamlined. So those,
yes,
okay,
so it cannot
Okay.
be treated as a in Nexus, if I am not wrong, we cannot if you go through the safe, in that we have the large solution. In Nexus we don't talk about the large solution. I think it will be uh, you can say the program level, or up to in terms of safe, it will go up to the program level, not up to the large solution level.
yes, exactly. That makes sense.
Davis, can you give a, real example of Nexus Sprint Backlog?
Real example of Nexus. Actually, currently in our organization, we are actually four Scrum Masters.
Uh-huh.
So this is actually like what happens in my team now is we have a product backlog, and our
Uh-huh.
sprint is actually 2 week, and we have four teams. Each team members have eight developers. So there are four product owners, and you have a set of feature, and it's a banking application they are building. So each week, which means each sprint, every 2 weeks, we have a milestone that need to be achieved. For example, a component A need to be delivered by Jan 15th, and component B need to be delivered by Jan 30th. So product owner, along with the development team, Scrum Masters, and the business stakeholders, refine. There's an activity in Nexus called refinement. Product backlog refinement is an event. So they refine and they find out that what are the items that need to be included in Nexus sprint backlog, so that all the four team members can work together so they can achieve the milestone of Jan 15. So your Nexus sprint log will be a subset of product backlog, which is actually quite enough big, which requires four teams to work on. And each four teams will analyze on the Nexus sprint backlog and understand. They segregate to four components. Maybe they say that team one, I will work on X item, and team B will work on the second item. And they will distribute their work from this Nexus sprint log and create their individual sprint backlog. And it's delivered. So that's a very common practice it is used. So we have only till 4 members, but when it comes to 8 or 9, again the complexity increases. And we have a Nexus integration team that consists of few DevOps engineer and one business analyst and a product owner. There is no Scrum Master involved in Nexus integration team. That's a real scenario, but ideally there should be a Scrum Master, product owner, and technically strong people should be there in the Nexus integration team. So basically,
Okay.
all DevOps and full stack engineers will be Nexus integration.
Okay, I have one scenario. Like we have one product owner, we have one Scrum Master, and the product owner, he's getting requirements from other team product owners. What I'm telling is the situation of a payment gateways. We have a one payment gateway which is supposed to be used in our multiple products. So it's like we have four different product owners, A, B, C, D, who give the requirement to the product owner E and the Scrum Master
Okay,
of
that team
team
works.
E.
Okay,
And then
okay, go on.
and then the team E, they actually work for all the requirements which they get from team A, B, C, D. So what kind of a team we call this? A simple scrum
No,
or a
actually,
Nexus or
Act-
what?
no, actually, you have four product owner, and each product owner has a team. So my question is whether the increment from each team is integrated, like which means that
Hello?
yeah, hello,
Yeah,
yeah. So my question is the output or the increment that is given from each sprint team or each Scrum team, whether they are integrated or it is like an individual component that they are delivering.
no, they are integrated.
Okay, so which means that it's good that they can use Nexus. So it's not advisable that you have a four product owners because again there is a lot of clarity issue. So one of the challenges we saw previously is that there is an overlap in scope. How do people understand that my team is doing the right scope which is not done by the other team? So in order to avoid that, it's always advisable you have a one product owner who owns the master product package. So which means all this list of requirements should be owned by a single person. When it is owned by more than one people, then happens the conflicts.
Okay.
So I don't know like what it will be called because it's not a general practice. And when you
Yeah,
say,
or maybe we can discuss this after offline.
yeah, no worries, no worries. When
Yeah.
I don't think like there will be a continuous integration is required in your product level. There may be, as Sumit said, it might be some high level integration or a particular team A will be using a component of team B, but they might not be continuously integrating. So here the intention is that all the team works together and they're delivering a single product.
Okay. That makes sense.
And there is only one Nexus sprint review, which means that all the team works is demoed as a single unit. So which means everyone is accountable.
Okay.
So this is again the pictorial representation of what we saw. You have a product backlog. There is refinement happening continuously. And this refinement is actually done by your product owner, Scrum Master, and all the members of the team, not product owner and Scrum Master. It includes all the development team. And you create a Nexus sprint backlog. And from Nexus sprint backlog, you create there's a Nexus sprint planning. And the output of Nexus sprint planning is your Nexus sprint backlog and Nexus goal. And this Nexus sprint backlog will be splitted to sprint backlog of individual team, and they integrate the work and they push it to sprint review. And there is a Nexus daily scrum, and also for each team will have their own daily scrum, whereas the integrated team will have Nexus daily scrum. So we will come to that. And there is a Nexus team integration team. They are actually accountable to ensure that all the integration happens properly. Okay. And you have a Nexus sprint retrospective is here, as well as there is an individual team retrospective also happens. So this picture is from the Nexus guide. Okay, is everyone clear?
So Davis, Sukanya here.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, when it comes to Nexus sprint backlog, and we start working on those changes, how about the changes that is there in the product backlog? Because the Nexus sprint backlog is a subset of product backlog, right?
Yes,
so we
yes.
start working on that. So how about the rest of the changes? What is there in the product backlog?
No, Nexus sprint backlog it's actually a sprint backlog. So, for example, let's assume this contains 70 items. So, and for an example, let's say there is 70 items, and team 1 will take from the 70 they will take 10, and team 2 will take 10, and each team will take their own respective shares from this Nexus sprint backlog. And it is actually delivered within 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Now, after that cycle, again, they will form a new Nexus sprint backlog.
That is fine, but the Nexus sprint backlog, we are taking that from the product backlog, right? So
Yes.
how about assume that there is a list of 100, and
Okay.
we pick up 70 from that because that
Okay.
involves integration. How about the rest 30? Will that be on hold till that time, or if we think that can be eliminated and taken in a separate sprint, then
No,
will that be taken care parallelly?
no. This is actually Nexus Sprint 1. So you assume that there are 100 items, and from this 100 items, this is Nexus Sprint is going to be a 2-week sprint. So you took 50 items, okay, in Nexus Sprint backlog, and you spread this 50 items to different teams, and it is deployed at the end of the 2 week. Now again after 2 weeks, your Nexus Sprint 2 will start. So again, your product owner and development team will sit together and will pick the remaining items. And actually, when the Nexus Sprint backlog is defined, your team works on that, and only when it is completed, the remaining items are taken. And there are certain cases where your product owner can negotiate with the team to understand that whether any urgent item from the product backlog can be included in their respective sprint backlogs. But it is advisable that you don't touch your Nexus Sprint log when it is defined, because it involves a lot of integration and lot of integration work. So it's riskier to alter your Nexus Sprint log while during the sprint.
So the entire product backlog itself will be having all changes that is involving integration, and we pick up from that, right?
Yeah, product backlog is only one list, and you will have Nexus Sprint backlog is actually pulled from the product backlog for every sprint. So at the end of the sprint, you again define a Nexus Sprint backlog. Your sprint 2 starts.
Okay.
Sorry, Davis, I have a question again over
Yeah,
here.
sure, no problem.
With regards to the refinement of the product backlog, who are all involved apart from the product owner? I understand that the product owner holds the final decision maker, but still, who else would be involved? Is it all the team members of all the teams, or the integration team?
It's all the team members. As per Nexus Framework, they are expecting all the team members, that is including if there are 9 team members, all the developers, and all the and this product owner is responsible for the product backlog refinement, and Scrum Master helps it.
Okay, and hence, I mean, and thereby, like, it goes to the prioritization of the Nexus sprint backlog as well. Then
yes.
Yeah.
So from here, they define like what are the high priority items that they need to be delivered in a particular Nexus sprint.
Release or sprint. Yeah. Okay.
And they create a Nexus sprint backlog. Actually, whatever happens in Scrum happens here, but actually like an exoskeleton. They call it as an outside skeleton.
Okay.
But inside it's again Scrum.
Right. In this case, identification of the integration team members from all the teams. So actually, literally, what kind of work they will be, having on priority.
So in real time, like in my organization, it's all DevOps engineers. They are all DevOps engineers. They ensure that all the completed work from each Scrum team is integrated. So it's more of like a continuous integration. As Sumit is saying in chat, it's like a continuous integration. That it's more of like they will be a technical DevOps team.
Okay.
And they are also responsible to coach each members to understand what is Nexus Framework is all about.
Okay. Yeah. And sorry for this is the last question, I hope. Yeah. Say for instance, we have a couple of modules. Like however Sumit gave an example. Let's take SAP as an example by itself. Like we have FI, we have CRM, we have SD, and all these are separate modules. And if at all, if you are going to implement Nexus over there, I presume that each and every module will have their own individual Nexus there. Am I right on this point?
You mean that they have a product backlog, or it is a single product?
Yeah, individual product backlog and individual Nexus team by itself.
Then actually,
say for instance, a financial module, like they will have their own Nexus team and they will have their product backlog separately, and the sales and distribution would be having their own Nexus team and their own product backlog, and likewise.
Okay, so does there any integration happening between finance and your sales?
It should, and that is the question. Like I mean, the maybe ideally like that would be the thing like which will happen, because like for me, for my Nexus, I'm into healthcare, and we have different modules like portals, and like we have drug rebate and member management and stuff, and all these have got separate Nexus team and separate backlogs.
So that is
But
actually your safe. That is actually the concept of safe. You have multiple product owner, multiple
we
Scrum
do
Master.
follow the Nexus. We do follow the Nexus, but I'm very new to Nexus, so
Yeah, see,
I'm a
you
little
can,
eager to know about this.
yeah, maybe you can call it by names, but the whatever you are following is actually a safe framework. So you have a
Okay.
chief product owner, chief Scrum Master.
No, product owners are also different.
Yeah, but again, there are many product owners, right?
Yes, many
So,
product owners.
okay, so maybe by theoretically you cannot call it as Nexus, but you can adopt some practices from Nexus. So there is no harm like if you say that you are each, for example, your finance team has a product backlog and they create a Nexus sprint backlog. And if you have more than 3 Scrum teams, then it is actually a Nexus.
Okay.
So you are saying that it's like a Nexus of Nexus. You are again like this integrity.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. Nexus of Nexus does happen, I think.
No, there is nothing
it
of
does
Nexus of
happen.
Nexus, but it's actually more like a safe framework.
Okay. So in this case, like who will be contacting? I mean, like involved in the integration activities, Davis? That's my question. That's my basic question over there.
It's your engineers, and it happens every day. So Sankita was asking, when does integration take place? It happens every day.
Okay.
So actually, they bring in for this Nexus integration team, which is strong in green. They actually adopt the XP and DevOps practices to ensure that continuous deployment happens, and the code is continuously integrated and deployed. So this is actually DevOps and XP practices are followed here inside the integration team. But as per Nexus framework, they don't talk about any XP or DevOps. They say that this team is actually responsible for integration. The method is up to you.
Okay. Yeah,
But again, it is suggested that the Nexus integration team is a core team and they should be technically very strong also.
Okay. Right. Fine. Yep. Thank you, Dave.
And your case, I don't think it can be called as a Nexus because you have again integration within the modules, finance and
But that
sales.
is how it is called.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
again, each team is having a Nexus. That is well, and no issues. There is no harm there. That's fine.
But actually, what happens is each and every module has got 8 or 9 teams by itself.
Yeah.
And we do conduct a separate Nexus, and there is a Nexus of Nexus also happening.
No worries. That's fine. Agreed. Actually, that's fine because the reason might be implementing safe is actually it's not a lightweighted. The reason is Nexus is a lightweighted. You can have Nexus within your domain and which I may say is finance and sales, and you can have a Nexus of Nexus. I don't know there is a word for Nexus of Nexus, but still you can have those things and you can integrate. As long as your integration is happening properly, you can do it.
Okay. Yeah.
So when you call it a Nexus, it's just moreover like the practices you are following. It's not that exactly the framework. Maybe you can adopt the practices like what this team is doing.
Okay. Yeah.
So Sankita is asking how the dependencies are handled. So dependencies in terms of integration or dependencies in terms of requirement. So you have a dependency in product backlog as well, and you have a dependency within the team also. So if it is a dependency within the product backlog, it's like that's what we say. Your product owner should be from a business side, from a customer side, who should be capable of clarifying all the business requirement and within the team. Okay. So if it is a requirement side, like he should be the person who should be able to clarify all the requirements so that the team is aware of what they are doing. And if so that's where the picture comes of Nexus daily Scrum and daily Scrum. So each team will have a daily Scrum to analyze what they have done and is there any impediment. And the representative from each team will have a Nexus Scrum. So we will come to that on dependency. So Nexus daily Scrum focus on integration issues. It's not that what you have done today, tomorrow, and is there any impediment. they have a Nexus daily scrum. It happens every day where the Nexus integration team meets and they actually analyze this dependency. So their core focus is on handling the dependency. So we'll come to that. So this is we already discussed, this is a flow. So initially your product backlog is continuously refined by your product owner, development team, and Scrum Master helps it. And from the product backlog, they define Nexus Sprint. They do an activity called Nexus Sprint Planning. And output of Nexus Sprint Planning is Nexus Sprint Backlog and Nexus Goal. And one Nexus Sprint Backlog is ready, each team will define their own sprint backlog and the development team starts. So here is the importance of your integration team. They ensure that all the works are integrated. And they use XP and DevOps practices to ensure that all the team's works are integrated. And there is a daily Nexus Scrum, and which is actually a representative from each team daily to identify. It's mainly the core focus for daily Nexus Scrum is actually to identify if there are any integration issues. So in the participants are representatives of each team, product owners can be there, as well as your integration team will be there. And Nexus Sprint Reviewers at the end of the Nexus Sprint, which is actually the combined work of all the 9 teams, maximum up to 9 teams, and they form it as an integrated increment, and that is being demoed to customer. And the feedbacks are whatever feedback, if there are any changes, if there's something need to be reworked, it all goes back to the product backlog, and again this cycle continues. So whatever goes to product backlog, again refinement happens. Okay, makes sense?
Davis.
Hi, Davis.
Yes.
Davis, I have one question.
Sure.
The question is, in Nexus Sprint, as you said, we have a product owner, Scrum Master, and team members. Who will select these Scrum Master? Who will select the product owner, Scrum Master, and team members?
Okay. Can you clarify? Are you referring to which component here?
This one, I mean the green one.
Oh, Nexus integration team.
Nexus integration team.
So basically your question is how this team is formed.
Exactly, yes.
So that is your team dynamics. Anyway, product owner is a person that need to be there, and there need to be one Scrum Master, and you should have a third person called Nexus integration team members. So these
No, my point is this, as you said that there are the 9 teams, and 9 teams will have a different 9 Scrum Masters.
Okay.
Then how this is decided that the Scrum Master of Team A will work as a Nexus integration team? I mean, who will decide this?
No. That is your team dynamics actually. That depends on your organization, person who is having the business knowledge, who is technically sound, or probably this team and Scrum Master may be new to the team, so he will not form as a part of the integration team. And there is no rule that he cannot come. He can come if he is capable. So basically, this team is formed as a self-organizing team, as a combination of the experts or a people whom the team feels that they are capable of integrating work. So if, for example, if you are not strong in XP or if you are not strong in DevOps, there is no point in that you going and sitting in Nexus integration. So as long as you can give some value out of Nexus integration team, the team can be formed. So your question is, who takes that decision? Maybe I don't know. No, that depends. Like maybe how to answer that. Who takes the decision? No, it's actually a self-organizing thing. This team is actually, it's not that your project manager or your portfolio manager, delivery manager says that, okay, let these people form a Nexus integration. It's not like that. It's actually the team itself forms a Nexus integration. So when they form, they will have a feeling. It's all a feeling. They will have a feeling that, okay, we are.
No. Here, this is like you said that people themselves forms the Nexus team. Let's say that in Nexus team, Scrum Master from Team A, Team 1, Team 4, they all wanted to be the part of this Nexus integration team. But as per this, what I understood, there is always one Scrum Master. So, you cannot take Scrum Master from Team 1, Team 7 or Team 8. So
Yes.
there should be one Scrum Master. So who will be deciding that this is the person who is going to work in the Nexus integration team as a Scrum Master?
Yeah, and also here your Nexus integration team is not fixed. It can be changed over the time. So let's assume for example, you're delivering a particular payment gateway module, and you feel that
Yeah.
okay, this sprint goal is actually your Nexus goal is delivering a payment gateway. Now you have a Nexus integration team who is experts in that. So which are the team will? So this can be. So here you see this person is from team 8. So he might be an expert from backend. So here, if it's a payment gateway, this P1 Scrum Master will be expert in payment gateway. So you can replace with it. So it's all based on the Nexus goal. How the team achieves a Nexus goal from an integration team. So if your Nexus goal is actually, okay, we deliver some critical component
Okay.
of some module, then this team 5 Scrum Master or this person will be an expert. So include him in the Nexus integration team. It is not necessary that throughout or on every sprint this team remains. It all depends on your goal, Nexus goal. You can like swap the people based on the complexity, what is going to be delivered, and people expertise. I think
Yeah.
that's fine.
But I still feel that if we swap a people like this, so the person who is already working in the Nexus integration team, there may be further disagreements that a person with the person you are replacing, that particular person, he still feels that he can deliver better.
Yes, yes. So there comes the role of the Scrum Master. So Scrum Master should act as a servant leader and facilitate
No,
and
no. What I mean to say that what I mean to say,
no,
I'm talking here about specifically Scrum Master.
yeah, I
Let's say
understood.
that for the
Hmm.
yeah.
No, I understand your
Let's say,
scenario. Like for example, a person is in Nexus integration team, and what happens if you remove that person in next sprint, right?
I mean, the real scenario is that the people they don't like to be shuffled. Let's say that if I'm working in a Nexus team as a Scrum Master, and if they wanted to replace me with some other Scrum Master, so I may not like it.
Oh, so there comes your
Or
coaching skills, like your people skill. So see, it's not that.
so my question is this only. My question is this only, that when you are replacing one person to another person, who is that person who is going to decide that, let's say that we are now replacing this person with another person?
No, no, there is no one actually decide. Actually, your team consists of 55 people, and you are going to deliver payment gateway. And when you're going to deliver that payment gateway, this entire 55 people knows each other that who will best form the integration team. So, for example, I might not be an expert in Java or something, and it may be some
Hmm?
technology they are working. So there is no point in me going and sitting in integration team. So I myself should pull back and say that I'm not eligible or I'm not good to come there. Because what happens if some people
Okay,
think that there is some issue between team and team to solve it? And if I'm stuck,
okay,
it's all gone. So there is no point like a person going and sitting in integration team. And integration team is actually not a supreme team among this man. There is no aspect like that. They are actually a support team. It's only a support team. There is nothing, even though we place it at the center of the slide, it doesn't mean they are a supreme team. Nothing like that.
hmm,
So it's actually so you have to think from this perspective also. It's actually a collaborative effort from all the 9 teams and the product owner and this integration team to achieve towards this Nexus goal. So there should not be any. It's a responsibility of the Scrum Master to remove all those ego issues. Like I was there in integration team. I was removed from integration team. Nothing like that. It's all everyone work towards this goal, and the success is measured like during the sprint review, not inside the team. So all this happened, and if your sprint review fails, your Nexus sprint review fails, there is no point in saying that I was in Nexus integration team. So
okay,
so it's actually accountability towards the team. Your whole entire team shares the success. Your entire team is responsible for failure. So there is no individual perspective in Nexus. Even in Scrum, we don't speak from an individual perspective.
okay, okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that makes sense. Now in Nexus, there is a role. There is only one role that is called Nexus Integration Team. And yeah,
Davis, I have one question. Can you go
yeah,
back to the previous slide?
sure, sure, sure.
Yeah. No, no, not this one. Where not next, I think.
This one.
No, not this one. Yeah, this one. See, in the sprint Nexus sprint planning, we have it shows that we have the Scrum team representatives.
Yes,
So
yes.
that can be any person who is a technical, who is from the technical or the business background, or there is no. It is not mandatory to join Scrum Masters. Like, uh,
No, it's actually not Scrum Master. See, even in our Scrum also, when we define Scrum in sprint planning,
yeah,
not in Nexus, in sprint planning, but in Scrum, it's actually who is actually the key players in sprint planning. It's your product owner and your development team.
and the development team. Yes.
Yeah, it's the same case in Nexus sprint planning also. It's always the people who does the work and who owns the work. And Scrum Master is always the facilitator. And obviously, all the Scrum Master will be there in sprint planning also, just to ensure that they know what is happening. But it's actually the key players are development team and the product owner.
Okay.
And and
So
when it
each
comes to
team.
Nexus, your integration team will definitely be a part of the sprint planning.
Okay. So from each team, including the Nexus team, integration team,
Yes,
they will decide one person who will go and attend this particular meeting, or all, or
uh,
because all the
no.
people cannot attend.
Yeah, it's actually a representative will be there from a team, but actually every members will attend because it is actually their team is going to do the work, so they should know what is planning. So what happens in our sprint planning in Scrum? It's all development team members and product owner. Same case, but you have a representative since it's a huge team. There will be always a representative. So representative means he's not taking any decisions. So he's not an authority to say that okay, let this come to our team. It's like he represents the team, but everyone is expected to be there in a Nexus sprint planning meeting.
Okay, but in that case, suppose we have 9 teams and each team has got
Understood.
9 members, so around 80 people will join.
Yeah,
So
and it's advised not all 80 people talk each other. It's like the representative talk on behalf of the team. So that's why they say a representative goes to the sprint planning. But like normally this is a distributed thing, it happens over the Skype or something, and all team members will be in that meeting. But actually, when you want to speak something, it's your representative speaks. So it's just to ensure that the communication is in a good shape.
okay,
So or else it would be a mess, like all 80 people is going to talk each other.
yeah, that was the confusion here. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's advisable.
So,
All the members will attend. That's for sure.
so Davis, I got by this that 80 people they can join
Yes.
Nexus sprint planning meeting, but only the representative they can, put their ideas or they can
Not exactly.
put forward.
Like the intention is you should follow a decorum, so that
Okay, okay, got it. Yeah.
so,
Okay,
so it's
thank
so
you.
if suppose a junior team member has an issue, or if we have a clarification, and he can speak in the call. There's no issues. But it doesn't mean that
Okay,
all the members started talking. But once in a while, like if you have an issue, you can raise it. You can clarify the doubts. That's well and good. But in order to
okay.
form a decorum for this meeting, there is a representative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it goes. So I think, are we good till now? Okay, now you have a Nexus events. So we discussed everything, right? The events are Nexus sprint planning, Nexus daily scrum, Nexus sprint review, Nexus sprint retrospective, and refinement. That is product backlog refinement. So these are the 5 events in Nexus. So this we saw yesterday, like our sprint planning, Scrum sprint planning. All the inputs are same: your team velocity or team capacity, your product backlog, business condition, requirement overlap. So this is the extra thing that comes here: requirement overlap. This need to be carefully considered. Your current product and the technology that you are working on. So that would be the input. And in sprint plan meeting, as we said, all the members are encouraged. Your Nexus sprint planning meeting is not sprint planning. Your Nexus sprint planning meeting, all the team members will attend. There will be a representative, and the output is actually a Nexus sprint goal. And also from this Nexus sprint backlog, they will derive their individual team sprint backlog. So Nexus sprint goal is actually an objective or what is a vision of this sprint. So where all the team will focus towards that goal. And this is important. What happens in a Nexus daily scrum? So in Nexus daily scrum is actually an event that happens every day where actually your integrated team or a representative from each team will attend, and they will try to answer these 3 questions. Was the previous day's work successfully integrated? Which means that all the 9 representatives from 9-member team is there, and they just said that, okay, I've done this work, whether it is integrated properly. So team analyze that. If not, why not? They will discuss that. And they continuously discuss to see what are the dependencies between the teams. So as Sahika was asking this question. So it is a responsibility of the integration team to ensure that what are the dependencies happening within all the 9 teams. So that is the importance of Nexus daily scrum, and they have to solve on a daily basis so that the individual team can work towards their sprint goal. And third thing is what information need to be shared across team in the Nexus. So there can be some challenges, some impediments that need to be communicated across the team. So that is decided during Nexus daily scrum. So the core objective is to ensure that integration is happening properly and to reduce the dependencies between the team. So that is the objective of the Nexus daily scrum. And what was the objective of the daily scrum, which means our scrum, which happens in individual level, that they actually give a report, or they within the team they collaborate and say, what did I do today, what was I going to do next 24 hours to achieve the goal, and is there any impediment. So that is being shared in a daily scrum, and from a representative from that team will come to a Nexus daily scrum, and they will actually collaborate each other and understand how we can remove the dependency or how we can minimize dependency and how we can successfully integrate our team's work. And they also share, if the teamwork is not integrated, then the technicians will understand like what challenges they are facing in integration. So this is a very important meeting in Nexus. So this is actually the core meeting that drives the entire team. So the people who attend this daily Nexus daily scrum need to be technically strong to understand that integration issues happening between the team. So it may not be necessarily Scrum Masters, it can be a development team, development members also. And your artifacts, you have a product backlog and you have a Nexus goal, that is towards what we are working, and you have a Nexus sprint backlog and integrated increment. Integrated increment is actually a summation of all the works done by all the 9 teams plus the previous work they have completed. And again, these are the same repetitions: product backlog, Nexus goal, Nexus sprint backlog. Okay, some things. So we'll wind up Nexus. So this is how Nexus, the structure falls. You have a Nexus event, that is sprint planning, Nexus daily scrum, Nexus sprint review, Nexus sprint retrospective, refinement. And from Nexus sprint planning, you have sprint planning, which means individual team sprint planning will happen, and output will be sprint backlog. And Nexus daily scrum is there, which is actually from the daily scrum of the team. And you have Nexus sprint retrospective, which is done after the individual team retrospective. And Nexus roles are Nexus integration team. So that is actually the Scrum Master, Product Owner, and the representative team members who are technically strong enough to solve all the integration issues. And your artifacts are, you have a product backlog, you have a Nexus sprint backlog, and you have an integrated increment. And from this Nexus sprint backlog, each team will create their own individual sprint backlog. So this is our Scrum, as we discussed yesterday. This is their structure, and there is a exoskeleton for this. So Nexus is built upon Scrum. As Nexus is actually scaling the product using Scrum as a building block. It's a very lightweighted and simple framework. So I think this session was good for you, and hope you are good. Do you have any questions?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, a simple one.
Yes.
What is the length of the Nexus one? Sprint usually 1 to 4 weeks we consider. Even for the Nexus, is it the same?
Yeah, it's actually in Nexus Guide, they have not mentioned anything about the sprint duration. But if you can consider the Scrum, it can be a maximum up to 1 month. But again, you have to derive your sprint length based on the team capacity, environment, your client requirement, and business need. So it's all, as the sprint is always defined based on a. So that's why we say Nexus is only a exoskeleton to scale a product or to scale a project, but they are using Scrum as their building block. So all the rules and your artifacts, everything in Scrum remains in Nexus, and Nexus is building upon Scrum. So if you want to adopt all the principles, everything applies that in Scrum is applicable in Nexus also.
Okay. One more thing. It's in my mind. In your example, 9 Scrum teams are there and 1 integration team, Nexus integration team is there. For example, sprint length is 2 weeks for each Scrum team, all 9 teams. And Nexus is also will consider as 2 weeks. Then all the events along with the Nexus and the general Scrum teams will have the Scrum events parallelly. So
Yes.
we might be missing the people, core people from all the people, even the Scrum Master and the product owner. So how is it possible?
You are saying the duration of the sprint.
Yes, for the Nexus alone.
So you can extend. See, actually, that's what we say. It depends on the environment you're working on. If you feel that it is not happening within the 2 weeks, there are a lot of overhead happening in 2 weeks, you can extend the sprint duration.
Okay.
And also one more thing is that even though this thing is happening, the deployment is happening daily. So that's where your DevOps picture comes. Even if you want, you can push this to production on a daily basis. Not a production instance, but you can push it for a review on a daily basis. So all the teams' work is actually integrated and deployed. So there where the integration team's core functionality comes. They can be DevOps engineers. And
yeah, thank you. But I want to take it offline. When
sure,
you're here,
sure.
when I meet you, I will ask you one question. I don't want to disturb the team, so I'll take it offline. Thank
No
you for
problem.
answering.
Anytime. No problem. Okay, guys, then.